Hey everybody, it's Mark Bouchard with Police Mentors. Today we're going to be going over a 68-page report which is about murdered police officers. There were 94 murdered police officers that were studied from a period of 1980 to 2023. This research was conducted by three people. Two of them are former police officers themselves, Rick Perron, Kathy Perron, and Jim Van Allen. Rick Perron is actually an expert in use of force and studying police suicide by cop. So awesome resources to draw from here. So the objective of this research was to learn from these murders and to help keep other officers safe. So let's jump right in and let's learn a bit about it. So they started out with 100 murders from 1980 to 2023 of Canadian police officers. 6 of those were excluded as they didn't fit the criteria. Ultimately, there was 84 incidents, 94 officers died, and there were 113 offenders. Some overview points. Number 1 is suicide by cop. Sometimes it gets talked about as though the person is only trying to die, but truly they also still pose a danger to other people. That's the thing we still need to remember. So Dr. Perron, Rick Perron, is an expert. He did his master's and his PhD studying suicide by cop and found that about 1/3 of police shootings are suicide by cop. That's why it's so important that we get taught about this. I reference it in my book, Setting My Sights on Stigma. Dr. Perron is one of the references that I cite because he is an expert. So, second overview point. These offenders have a "I'm not going back to jail" mindset. They're just refusal to get apprehended, and if they need to kill you, they're not going back to jail. They don't care what it takes. Number 3 is anti-police sentiment. So there are some people out there who either want through revenge on cops, like specific cops, or have a "I hate the cops" kind of mindset. I'm going to get the cops. I'm going to kill a cop. And sometimes when they're doing that, they're basically just trying to kill a uniform. Like, yes, they're trying to kill, and ultimately in these cases, killing a person, but truly they're just, they have a hatred for the police. They've probably been arrested and all that stuff, and they're just trying to kill someone who's wearing that uniform today. It's not actually about that officer. That officer is truly a stranger to them. And number 4 is an intent to kill civilians. So as much as this study is about murdered police officers, there also were 20 innocent civilians that were murdered at these same incidents. And that's why the police are doing this. We do this to keep the public safe. We race into danger to keep the public safe. So we always have to keep in mind that's why we're doing this. Now, in relation to the timings of these murders, there were 6 years in that study where there was not a murdered police officer in Canada. However, from the years 2020 to 2023, 15 of those murders happened within that time period. So it really shows how much it's been increasing in these most recent years. In relation to gear, because this study does go back, all the way to 1980, that there were officers who didn't have the same gear we have now. So things like tourniquets and body armor. So, however, in relation to body armor, 4 of the murdered officers had been issued body armor but weren't wearing it, whereas 19 of them were killed wearing their body armor. And now in relation to the tourniquets, it talks about some of the wounds, and 18 of the officers had what they described as torso and arm wounds, and 10 had abdominal and leg wounds. Now, it doesn't differentiate which of those are torso, abdominal, legs, or arms, but it is important to know that tourniquets potentially could save some of those lives as well. So make sure you have your tourniquet on you. Okay, it also found that there is no routine. So here's a quote. "The findings suggest there are no routine calls or routine traffic stops." And that's because routine can go from feeling routine and being possibly even treated as routine to very dangerous, being, ambushed, assaulted, attacked in a moment's notice. There was a girl from my basic training class where she went to a minor theft and she's just holding the door open for someone who decided they were going to kill a cop that day. He started stabbing her. Thankfully, she was very fit and she managed to win that encounter. She managed to fight for her life and survive. But we have to know there are people out there trying to do those ambushes. Speaking of ambushes, 44 of these calls involved an ambush. And they broke that down into two types of ambushes. One is premeditated ambushes, and a second one is like a unplanned, unprovoked, just spontaneous ambush. In regards to the offender's motivation, so 40 of them were wanting to avoid apprehension. This goes back to this mindset of I'm not going back to jail and I don't care what that means. I don't care what it takes. 8 were revenge against the police, and 5, I'll lump those together, another 5 were police haters. So people, again, trying to almost kill a uniform as opposed to a specific cop. Whereas so these revenge ones were about a specific cop who had arrested them or done them wrong they were trying to get. Another 8 were suicidal people, and 7 were categorized as mental illness. Now, in relation to the weapons used, this is a really important part. 8% of the murdered officers were disarmed officers that were killed with their own weapon. And the reason this is so important is because sometimes we talk in policing about shooting an unarmed person. And just because someone's unarmed does not mean that they cannot be a lethal threat. And this shows it. This is the stats that back that up. And I'm not saying we need to go around shooting people that are unarmed, but we have to be aware that just because you're in a police uniform and just because you carry a gun does not make you invincible. And we have to be aware that someone could disarm us, and we have to train for that and be ready for it. In addition to that 8%, there were another 3 more that were disarmed, but their firearm was not used in their murder. And then 3 more did an attempt to disarm the officer, but were not successful. But those officers still were murdered, just not with their own firearm. So they also talk about how many officers did not draw their firearm or fire their firearm. And part of that is action-reaction, where with ambushes, they may not have had the chance, and some did not have the chance. However, they have a quote about this. In some, it appeared that some officers did not have an opportunity to draw their sidearms. However, a great number of officers decided not to draw their sidearms while responding to gun calls, shots fired reports, and other weapons complaints. In one case, a police sniper testified in an inquiry that he decided not to shoot an armed offender in the back, as he did not believe the public would condone a decision to shoot under those circumstances. In that case, the offender left his residence with 2 loaded long guns after threatening to kill police and himself. Upon being confronted, the offender fatally shot one officer, pointed a firearm at another officer. The offender was then neutralized by another officer. So again, it just shows sometimes we're having to make life and death decisions, and ultimately those can lead to potentially the death of someone else if we are not able to when needed and when it's fully justified. In addition, they referenced that 3 of these officers died in what we call the fatal funnel. And basically what that means is like standing in a doorway. So we try and teach officers that it's a good idea not to stand in a doorway when you don't have to, because people can shoot at doors and they expect you to be there. 2 of these officers died from no-knock warrants, and they noted that one of those warrants was thrown out in court. Now, they also made some recommendations, and of those recommendations, they highlighted the need to identify last resort thinking. That's, again, I'm not going back to jail, I'll do anything it takes, I don't care. Those people who are just at the end of their rope, we have to know that that can be very high risk. They also highlighted the risk of these anti-police, anti-government, I hate the cops, that type of stuff, and recommended more and better tracking to be aware of them and to take more care around that. Number 3 was stolen vehicles. There was a high rate of stolen vehicles, a lot of danger around those using stolen vehicles. I know in policing, we often treat stolen vehicles as a very high risk, but it's essentially this is justifying what we do and that we should continue to do that. And number 4 was ambush training. So it recommends that both new officers and in-service, like current officers, be trained on ambush training. And I thought that was a really good point, given they're highlighting how frequently these ambushes have led to death. And we should teach officers to recognize, listen to your subconscious. If something doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right, that there's probably a reason why it seems different than some of the other calls you've been to. So the title of this is Unveiling a Tragic Reality. a review of murders of Canadian police officers from 1980 to 2023. I will put a link down below. Leave me a comment. Tell me which of these points struck you the most and what you think. Also leave a comment. Let me know what else you'd like to see a video about. So please hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll also leave a link down in the comments so you can see my book as well. All right. Thank you.